Have you ever felt like you've tried everything to heal from the pain of sexual abuse, and yet nothing seems to really be helping? Well, one of the reasons why most people struggle to break free from the pain of past child abuse is because the techniques out there are positioned as a one-size-fits-all answer. What I want you to know is that there are actually 3 distinct phases on the path to recovery, and I'd love to share with you about these phases, what issues you must resolve to move to the next phase, and what kinds of support you'll need in order to move forward as quickly and completely as possible. The road to recovery is much easier when you know what stage you're in and what to do next. So don't hesitate. Go to www.rachelgrantcoaching.com/checklist and get your 9-page guide today. Now, welcome everyone to Beyond Surviving, the safe space for survivors of childhood sexual abuse to receive support, resources, and share their stories. Beyond Surviving is about freedom, healing, connection, and even laughter and fun. Most importantly, it's about letting go of the pain of abuse and finally moving on. I'm Rachel Grant, and for those of you who don't yet know me, I've been a sexual abuse recovery coach since 2007 and am the author of Beyond Surviving, the final stage of recovery from sexual abuse. I work with survivors who are sick and tired of feeling broken and unfixable, and I help them break free from the pain of abuse and live the lives they want. You can learn more about me and the Beyond Surviving program at www.rachelgrantcoaching.com. Now today, folks, I am so excited to have here with me my guest, Matt Pappas, who is going to be sharing with us about being a male survivor of childhood sexual abuse and also his work as a certified life coach. So let me tell you a little more about Matt. He is indeed a certified life coach, and he specializes in overcoming anxiety and trauma survivor coaching. He's a blogger and a podcaster. He actually founded Surviving My Past, a blog in support of all who have survived the trauma of abuse. And he started Surviving My Past originally as kind of like just a personal therapy blog, right? Like a place for it to help, aid him as he was doing some, intense therapy work, but found out pretty quickly that he was not alone as a survivor. And now that blog has grown into a full-blown advocacy website, which has his podcast and videos for not only his story, but also the story of other survivors who refuse to be silent. I've had the great honor of being on Matt's podcast, and it's amazing, so I highly, highly recommend you all go and check that out. Through writing and sharing his story and working with a trauma-informed coach, Matt found his calling, and now he's coaching himself and working with clients and doing advocacy work to help others who are working to overcome their past and discover their true, authentic self. So we have so much to glean from our time here today with Matt, so let's not waste another second. Let's get to it. Hi, Matt.
Rachel, what's happening? How are you, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing well. It's so wonderful to be here. Podcast a couple of times, and now it's really lovely to have you here as my guest and get to highlight you and your journey and the work that you're doing these days, which I'm so excited to hear more about.
Well, thank you. I definitely appreciate it, and I am excited to be here on your show. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. So to get us started, I want to hear a little bit about your journey and your story. And one thing I'm really curious about is, when did you first realize that you were a survivor, and, what made you seek out help there in the beginning?
Well, my journey as a survivor really started several years ago. I had just recently had my marriage had ended in divorce, and I had sought out the help of a therapist. Excuse me. And so I was originally seeking out the help of a therapist just to kind of, start to put my life back together. I'm single now. I'm a single dad. What am I going to do, et cetera, et cetera. So then working through that stuff with a therapist, that kind of came out through some writing exercises that I was a survivor of trauma. And so when that came out, just kind of general conversation and through therapy work, we immediately started to focus on that. As I said, the memory just kind of came up randomly. We started talking about it and working through it for the next couple of years or so. And so through that process, I began writing, just personal journaling, that kind of thing. And I realized just how helpful writing was for me, how therapeutic it was, how much it really helped me get my thoughts and my feelings out. And so I really started to really kind of dive into this whole survivor thing really in like 2014 and 2015. Of course, all the while realizing that, the endured happened between when I was 5 and 10. So I had suppressed it for, well over 30 years.
Yeah.
Didn't think about it, didn't care about it, didn't affect me, it's in the past, blah, blah, blah. And, of course, realizing through the therapy work and through my writing that, as as well, that so many things come back to being, a survivor of trauma in your life. Things like low self-esteem, lots of anxiety, relationship problems, just anything can really be traced back to childhood trauma. And I found that out. And once I realized that, I'm like, oh, my God, this makes so much sense of all the things I had gone through in my life. So many of the relationship problems, the bullying in school, the being a survivor, all the anxiety, the low self-esteem, the lack of confidence in myself, everything was traced back. So once I started to realize that through the writing and therapy, then I started to really dive into it. I started doing research and reading books and watching the writing and therapy. Then I started to really dive into it. I started doing research and reading books and watching videos and, of course, writing more about it. And once I started to realize that, writing about it was so helpful, I thought, well, maybe I'll kind of put it online and see what happens. And then that's how Survive My Past was born, in early 2016 by just me making a random blog called survivingmypast.net and putting some stories up there and just realizing that people were reading them and they were commenting and sharing. And I was realizing, hey, I'm not alone here. And, of course, the survivor community is just huge. It's just huge all over the world. And I felt such a connection with the community. And that's really kind of helped fuel the blogging. And, of course, it also turned into the podcasting, the videos, and, all that type of stuff. So it's been a journey that started between 5 and 10 when I was sexually abused by a teenager up late, and then kind of put it on hold and didn't deal with it for 30-some years, and then randomly came out, and I think it wasn't even related, and that's kind of how it all got started.
Wow. Yeah, Matt, thanks so much for sharing, a bit of your story with us. And, one of the things that really jumps out to me from that is this experience of the pause, right, the being on hold, and it coming through to you, in therapy where, you weren't necessarily looking for it, right? You weren't going for that, but it really showed up and came forward for you. And I know for a lot of my clients and a lot of the people in my community who have a similar experience, there can be, just layers, there are a lot of emotions around that, and it can be jarring, it can be unsettling. And I wonder if you can just speak to a little bit about how you kind of navigated that moment where it went from being this thing that had been kind of tucked away, not looked at, to something that was now like, wow, I've really got to take a look at this. Does anything come to mind about what that may have helped to others who are listening who are in a similar place?
Well, I'll tell you, obviously it was very difficult. Anytime you start to realize and open up to somebody that you are a survivor of trauma and you endured something that nobody should ever have to go through, something painful and personal and private and scary and, all these emotions. And when you start to work through it, for me, my therapist did a great job of creating a very safe place. So I felt safe. I felt secure. We had built up a rapport over, about 6 months or so before I really started diving into the whole trauma thing. So I felt a good connection with her. I felt like she was somebody I could trust. So when it kind of came out that I was a survivor, it wasn't, believe it or not, it wasn't as hard as what I thought it would be. And I know that, that may sound very weird, because you're talking about somebody who, survived childhood sexual abuse, but somebody who, survived childhood sexual abuse. But I think it was such a relief, really, to just start talking about it, to start writing about it, to start to admit out loud that, to somebody that obviously, that I trusted, of course, which is crucial. You have to be able to trust the person,
right,
and deem them a safe person. But I really felt a sigh of relief, and then this empowering feeling of, okay, it's out there, I said it, now what's involved with this? Like, what else is there? What other feelings are there going along with it? So I kind of took it upon myself to really embrace this challenge. And that's not to say that everything was hunky-dory and I was happy all the time and everything was peachy. It was very difficult,
sure.
hard work. There were a lot of tears.
Yeah.
There were a lot of anger, a lot of cursing, a lot of, just frustration, a lot of, feeling depressed and all that. But through it all, I realized that I was on to something here. I was on to something that was going to uncover a ton of answers, a ton of mysteries, reasons why all my life I struggled in so many areas. And when I started to put two and two together and realize how everything was so interconnected, I got more empowered to figure out more and figure out why. And I started doing research and learning about how the brain is affected by trauma and how it affects, your immune system and everything about you. And so it was very emotional for me. As I said, it was very empowering once I was able to initially say those words that, I'm a survivor, and to hear somebody tell me that I'm a survivor. So when I started doing that, I really just kind of took the bull by the horns, for lack of a better term, and just started really diving into what it means to be a survivor and why I feel the way that I do. So, I work with clients, and of course, through the blog and the stories and everything, so many people emotional, and I just really think I took it upon myself to really just use it as a learning experience to try and understand what happened and to kind of take the next step forward so that I didn't spend the next 30 years of my life feeling like I did for the first 30-some years.
Right on. Yes, yeah. And, that's such an important part of my work as well, is really finding, helping and supporting people in finding their way to what's next, right? So that our lives are not, constantly being, informed or interrupted by or a result of things that occurred in the past. And to get there, I love what you were saying about, lots of different pathways and different things that help and work. And you've already talked a little bit about how writing was just so healing and helpful for you on so many different levels. Were there other things that you would roll, other strategies or techniques or things that you did that were especially helpful in your healing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different techniques and things that I learned. Obviously, writing was one of the first things and one of the key things that's helped me, and still does now. I still write, I still blog. Of course, podcasting is also a big part of it, because I can not only share my story through my voice, but of course, interact with other survivors and coaches and advocates, and really kind of get their take on it as well. So that's been healing for me, to have an interaction in the survivor community. That's a huge part. Getting my voice out there and participating in online chats and Facebook groups and places where other people are coming to share their story. So I don't feel alone, and to understand, the feelings that I have, other people have the same thing. And, being able for me to tell my story is obviously, it works both ways in that sense. Some other things, of course, in addition to the writing and the interacting in the survivor community, is also using a lot of mindfulness, like a ton of mindfulness, really understanding what it means to be fully present in my life now, every day, in every situation, to not look too far, to not look too far ahead in life, and to not dwell on the past, to embrace the moment I'm in right now, wherever it is, whether I'm out for a walk and I'm listening to the birds, or I'm listening to the cars go by, or a stream or something, or if I'm fully present, just sitting at the house reading a book. I try to stay focused on what I'm doing and not let my mind wander too much, because when your mind wanders, then you start to get into trouble and you start to think about things, and that obviously can open you up into a whole lot of pressures and things like that. So that's been a huge thing with mindfulness, and really DBT skills overall has been very helpful. Some of the things, just a handful, have been very helpful. Working on my own interpersonal relationships and that type of thing, learning what it means to assert yourself around others in a kind way, and really understand who was safe and who was not, who I can talk to and who I should surround myself with, healthy boundaries and safe people. That's been huge. Obviously, working with a therapist and a coach for a while has been very helpful. But those are some of the things, just a handful of things that I do that has either worked in the past and or I still do today, dealing with this. And because, it really is, a lifelong journey in being a survivor. That's kind of what I always say. So it's a constant learning that I really try and embrace. Like I said, not every day is, I'm an awesome survivor and I can do everything. Some days it's, my God, how can I get out of bed in the morning? And, why am I up all night thinking about this, that, and the other thing? So there are still tough days even now that I've been at this for several years. And, that's just kind of par for the course. But by putting in the hard work, by taking care of yourself, doing a lot of self-care, and, things like I mentioned, that's really helped me such a great deal in my journey.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, and for those of you who are listening, one thing I hope you can kind of draw out from what Matt is saying there is that there are so many pathways, right? And so there's no one way to go about healing. My clients find, the Beyond Surviving program and that approach and that pathway to be effective, right, for them. And then, the other people really benefit from work that's more somatic or, writing as a modality for healing, creative arts as a modality for healing. So that's really good news because, being able to personalize, your healing and the resources that you're accessing. And then most wonderful thing is being able to get a kind of a conglomerate of a lot of different things, right? As you were talking about, well, I need to deal with this piece over here, so what's going to help me do that? What's the best thing that's going to help me deal with this piece over here? So thanks for sharing that and just telling us a little bit more about how you tackled that and how you went about, your healing journey. And what I love is that, from that place of doing that work and being in that, you have found, a passion. You've found something that you want to spend your days doing, which is working with survivors and particularly, working with them around anxiety. And for sure, anxiety is one of those, it's going to be there. If you've been through abuse, you're going to be dealing with anxiety symptoms and something that we need to learn how to work with and overcome or become comfortable with, whatever the case may be. So I'd love to hear just kind of more, talk to us about anxiety. What is it to your mind? What are some of the things that we can do to overcome anxiety? What are the approaches that you found that have been most effective?
Yeah, absolutely, Rachel. And anxiety is something that obviously affects so many people. I mean, just in the U.S. alone, there's over 40 million people that have a specific anxiety type of disorder. And, that's not even to mention just the everyday anxiety that comes through life and work and home and all that. But, of course, when you're a survivor of childhood trauma or a survivor of any type of trauma, anxiety is just heightened and it's taken to a whole new level of frustration and fear, and really can be so debilitating. And one of the key things that I learned throughout my journey as a survivor is to understand anxiety and try and figure out why it happens and where it's coming from and what makes so many people, and how we deal with it so differently in ways that we can learn to get a handle on it so it doesn't become so debilitating and take over our life on a daily basis. And one of the biggest things that I'll share that I've learned and that I work with clients on is that understanding that anxiety in and of itself is full of tricks and lies. Anxiety is basically trying to keep you stuck, to keep you miserable, to keep you alone, to keep you living in fear, to keep you stuck in the past, to keep you trying to guess and anticipate the future and worry about everything all the freaking time, all the time. And so, there is some, some will say that, that having some anxiety is good and that, everybody has some type of anxiety. Well, you have to kind of be careful with that statement because a lot of the general anxiety that, it may be quote unquote natural or good for you is really just fear. It's fear that, it may be quote unquote natural or good for you is really just fear. It's fear of what's going to happen. It's fear of what's happened in the past and you repeating it. It's fear of you not being able to handle something. So, and fear is something that obviously, we're all born with that natural response. I mean, it helps keep us alive. So fear is obviously not a bad thing, but anxiety plays off of fear and can really just get you into this mode of being so afraid of trying anything new, of going anywhere, of doing anything, of even leaving the house, of getting up in the morning, of going to bed at night, of interacting with others. Like it can be incredibly detrimental to your everyday well-being. So understanding that anxiety is using everything in your life that it can against you to try and keep you miserable and stuck. And to understand that, another thing is that anxiety will just pile on and keep you stuck and miserable.
True. Right? Like, it's so true.
Yeah, I mean, like, it doesn't play favorites. It's like, okay, I'm going after everybody and anybody, and I'm going to pile it on and pile it on and pile it on until you are so unbelievably down and miserable that, you can't even leave the house. You don't want to go to work. You don't even want to go to the grocery store. You don't want to go to that dinner party. You don't want to go out with your friends because you're afraid of so many things happening that probably aren't going to happen. Or if something does not work out as, to the greatest, way, it's probably not going to be as bad as what you're thinking about. So understanding that anxiety is full of tricks and lies is one thing that I really work with my clients on. And when I understand that, when I first learned that, it was life-changing. And it immediately allows you to really take a hold of anxiety, to acknowledge what's happening and say, literally sometimes say to yourself, hey, I feel anxious right now, anxiety, I know what you're trying to do to me. I feel anxious right now, anxiety, I know what you're trying to do to me, but I know I'm safe. I know I can handle this. I know that, I can do whatever's going to be, I can handle whatever's coming or, whatever the case may be. But, really taking that initiative on your own behalf to do a little research to figure out what anxiety is trying to do to you, and then you can head it off at the pass before it even starts by taking care of yourself and using various techniques to really kind of not, to really lessen the effects of anxiety really pretty quickly. I mean, anxiety may have been troubling you and me and for everybody for years and decades, but the way to get out of it does not take years and decades. It really doesn't. I mean, more often than not, just a simple understanding of what it is can really take that journey to the next level.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, what a wonderful way to kind of conceptualize anxiety. That it is, a way of us keeping us in the future, like what ifs. And in that space of the what ifs, the things that we imagine often are accelerated or more intensified than what, will probably most likely actually happen. And that it just kind of keeps us in this loop. What if that happens, and then that might happen, and then this might happen. And it's all like this big, bubble of lies and confusions and fears, right? That ultimately, exactly as you say, end up keeping us stuck, unable to take action, unable to move forward or to have the experiences in our lives that we really want to have. So I love, first of all, the encouragement that you're giving to our listeners to learn. The more that we understand, I totally agree with that. The more that we understand, like, what's going on a nervous system level, on a biological level, on a brain level, nervous system level, on a biological level, on a brain level, and then just as a concept on the whole, then, once we have that education piece and that understanding, then yes, we can kind of come in now and do things to start countering the effects and reducing anxiety. And so talk with us about like one of your favorite strategies for overcoming anxiety.
Well, yeah, there's so many, but one of the best ones, and one of the ones that I really try and embrace for myself and work with clients on, and one that I've written about a lot, is really just honestly taking a step back. Because when anxiety thrives, you're living in the emotional moment. You're living in the emotional mind where you can't think rationally. You can't make logical, rational, thoughts and decisions on your own behalf because you're spinning out. You're worried about the future, whatever's worrying for you at the time. Literally pause, take a step back in your mind and say, okay, wait a minute. What's really going on here? Am I really in danger? Am I really, worried about, such and such happening at work? Is this really going to play out the way that my mind is trying to tell me to?
Mm-hmm.
And so you separate yourself from the emotional moment, and you almost kind of look at yourself from a high level point of view. Like you're looking at yourself from a distance. Looking down at yourself, playing out this scenario. And when you separate yourself from that emotional moment, and you can say, okay, I am really safe now. This is not necessarily going to happen the way that my mind is trying to tell me. I am capable. I have been through this before. This is just anxiety trying to trick me and to keep me stuck and miserable. I know that I can go into that office or into that dinner party or run that errand or deal with that problem at home, whatever it is, ability to do it because I've done it before, and I know that there's nothing to fear other than what anxiety is trying to lie and tell me. So one of the biggest things is that anxiety thrives in the emotional moment. And when you can literally, if you're walking somewhere or you're standing somewhere, literally pause if you can and just say, okay, what's going on here? What's really happening? And when you do that, you immediately disengage the emotional mind. You start thinking rationally, and you can make your way to that decision and navigate it much more clearly and much more healthy in a more compassionate kind way to yourself than the, oh my God, I'm spinning out, everything sucks, everything's terrible, all these types of things that anxiety tries to tell you in the moment.
Yeah, really important what you're saying there about our ability to pause and to take a step back is key in so many areas for survivors of abuse and trauma, and very in particularly when it comes to anxiety, because that brain of ours, it wants to just, and if we don't interrupt that process, it is going to take us somewhere, right? On quite a ride. Yeah, and when we get into that, the emotional mind, we can go into a dysregulated place, and we do that, the prefrontal cortex part of our brain just stops kind of being as on the scene, where we can do that rational, calming, kind of executive functioning kind of thinking through. So to be able to take that pause, step back from it, look at it from a different angle, ask those questions. So many really great questions that you just shared there with our audience. So thank you for that, for how to actually access that. So yeah, really cool. Now I know on your website you have a download, a 5-step to cease anxiety kind of free gift that is really meant to help people empower themselves and learn more. Can you tell us just a little bit about that guidebook and what people can expect to find when they download it? Can you tell us just a little bit about that guidebook and what people can expect to find when they download it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I made this downloadable when I was really kind of working through a lot of, things with anxiety, when I was doing a lot of research, and it's called CEASE, C-E-A-S-E. It's an acronym, and really it's kind of 5 easy things that you can do. And of course, as you mentioned, it's a free downloadable on beyondyourpast.com. All you do is go there, click on the button, and you can download it immediately. It'll be sent to your email, save it to your phone, your computer, whatever you want. But it's really just 5 quick, easy things that you can do when you feel anxiety starting to kind of take over in any situation, whether at home, at work, you're out for a walk, you're dealing with some kind of problem somewhere, and, you start to feel yourself getting kind of shaky and nervous. You're starting to feel anxious. You're worried, all the things that come along with feeling anxious. And it's really just things, as I said, it's called CEASE, and the first letter C is check your breathing. Check your breathing. Obviously first, check your breathing. Is it rapid? Is it shallow? Am I breathing hard? Am I breathing fast? Am I even breathing at all? I know that sounds weird, but it's,
right. Hold our breath. For
right.
Sure.
Yeah. So, check your breathing. And the second one is evaluate. Take stock of where you are. Am I safe right now? Is there anything I should be aware of? What's going on around me? And by doing that, as I said, you're starting to disengage all the emotional parts of your brain going haywire in 100 different directions. You're starting to see what's around you, and you are disconnecting from all of the emotions that are flying by in your mind. And then you ask yourself, where's this anxiety coming from? What happened yesterday? What happened an hour ago? What am I thinking might happen tomorrow? Figure out where the anxious feelings are coming from. And the next one is use your senses to ground yourself. And here's where you really start to disengage. From the emotional mind, and you really start to just kind of really start to relax and kind of come back to a normal kind of playing field, so to speak. Use your senses. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I feel? What do I smell? what can I eat or drink? Physically, put your hands on the chair, put your feet on the ground. What am I smelling? What am I hearing? And you're focusing your attention not on the fear and the anxiety, but you're focusing it on yourself and what's around you and you personally. And that is just incredible. Of course, that's part of being mindful. And then the last one is ease back into the present. And, your breathing is kind of back to a normal plane now. You know that you're safe. You figured out where the anxiety is coming from. You've grounded yourself. Now you go and distract and do something else. And it's not a distract of, just pushing it aside and kind of pretending it didn't happen. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to make dinner. I'm going to call a friend. I'm going to text somebody. Anything to focus your mind on something else. And really all this can be done in just like a minute or so, and then before you know it, you're back to kind of feeling, kind of even keeled and back on track and ready to continue your day. So it's a really easy process that you can remember with the acronym. Of course, you can get it for a free download, but it's really just 5 quick steps that really, really can help you in a pinch.
Awesome. That's so wonderful. Yeah, kudos to you for, everything that you've done, really, Matt, in your journey and in your healing to be able to come to this place of, being able to put things together in this way, right? I'm a big fan of making things simple and easy. Sometimes, we make this journey super hard and it doesn't have to be. So, the more, clear cut it can be in this, process that you've just been describing is so wonderful in that way. So the more, clear cut it can be in this, process that you've just been describing is so wonderful in that way. So I love that. And it's really been great to just kind of dig in and explore this topic with you and kind of get your take on anxiety. And I hope for those of you who've been listening that you've learned a little piece, maybe you've been just encouraged, if nothing else, that this is not a place where you have to remain stuck, that this is something that you can learn to work with and overcome and be free from, really, at the end of the day. So I want to take a moment to talk a little bit, Matt, about the other resources that you have available. So there's the survivingmypast.net, which is your blog, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then your podcast, which is, how can people best get the podcast? What do you recommend?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So the survivingmypast.net, of course, past.net, of course, that's the blog that we talked about earlier. That features not only my story, but of course survivor stories from people all over the world who are survivors of all different types of trauma. And there are links on there to other resources, including my coaching. The podcast can be found on actually either survivingmypast.net or my coaching website, which is beyondyourpast.com. And all you do is go there. There's a link up at the top that says podcasts. You can catch all of the replays on SoundCloud, on iTunes, on Spreaker, all your basic podcasting apps, they're all there. And that's really a podcast that I do that I've been doing for, I guess maybe about a year and a half now or so, since I really started diving into it. And it's all, a lot of the initial podcasts are just me sharing my story as a survivor, dealing with anxiety, and then you'll notice, of course, as you listen more and more, it's evolved into really bringing on a lot of guests, fellow survivors from all over the world, advocates, life coaches, clinicians, everyday people who are using their story, who are using their careers, who are using their talents and their gifts to help others. And, of course, Rachel, you've been on there, I think it's 4 times now. 3 or 4 times on my show.
Wow.
Yeah. I know, right? It's awesome. So, yeah, you can definitely check it out. Just
awesome.
Search for Beyond Your Past on, iTunes or whatever. Of course, just go to beyondyourpast.com.
Awesome. Yeah, I really encourage you all to take advantage of the many, many resources that Matt has put together, through his own journey and through collaborating with other survivors and advocates, et cetera. So check out the blog, check out the podcast, get that free download. And, of course, if you're interested in working with Matt, if, you want to learn more about his work and his programs, you can visit beyondyourpast.com. Or you can email him coaching@beyondyourpast.com and get in touch with him and have a conversation and learn more and see if he can be of a support to you in your journey. So, Matt, I'm so thrilled to have had this time here with you today. It's been just great to connect again. And any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Well, yeah, Rachel, just thanks so much. I love your show. I'm obviously a big fan. I enjoy what the message that you put out is just so spot on. And, I love what you're doing, and I just know that you help so many people. So it's been a true honor for me to be on here with you. And, I think just one thing I would leave with your listeners is that you're right. Being a survivor of trauma is not something where you have to stay stuck forever. It's not a lifelong sentence of misery. Stay stuck forever. It's not a lifelong sentence of misery. It's not something where you have to just be living in the past and, I'm damaged goods and all this kind of stuff and I'm broken. There's healing available out there. There's so many avenues, so many creative ways that you can express yourself in your own healing journey. Things that we talked about earlier in the show. And, just understand that it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. It is a lot of hard work. But if you embrace it with the mindset of learning about yourself, learning what happened, putting the pieces together as to why you feel the way that you do and things that have happened, and you start to understand how it all gets traced back to childhood trauma, it's incredibly liberating, it's enlightening, and it's encouraging when you start to advocate on your own behalf. So that's definitely something I encourage everybody is take that first step on your own behalf, start working through it, with a safe professional, reading about, writing about it, doing whatever you can to help yourself, because ultimately it's going to be you that takes that first step towards healing.
Yeah, cheers to that. I couldn't have said that any better. Right on. Yeah, I'll take that advice. That's some really good advice right there. Oh, man. So thank you once again, Matt, for being here. And thank you, everybody, for joining us and tuning in today. Don't forget to visit rachelgrantcoaching.com to learn more about sexual abuse recovery coaching and to explore the other resources that are also available on the site. Please be sure to subscribe to our podcast. Leave us some comments. Let us know what you're learning and gaining from listening. And then tune back in next time because we have so much more to share with you. And until then, take good care of you.